So this is the third screenshot video for the crimes course and the defensive justification in weeks 11 to 12. And I left us off, we're looking at deadly physical force. We noted initially it can be used against unlawful deadly physical force. What we also have are three other categories of when deadly physical force can be used that doesn't directly involve defending against unlawful deadly physical force. So the first category is forcible rape. If a person has reason to believe that they or a third person is being or about to be forcibly raped, then to the extent reasonably necessary, deadly physical force can be used to prevent that. And imagine a frame-by-frame analysis. This is unpleasant, but I think it's something that needs to be done of the so-called bike path rapist in Buffalo. I don't know why he was called a rapist when he was actually a rapist and a murderer. But apparently part of his MO would be a woman would be jogging or walking in a secluded area like a bike path, and he would be hidden, and then he would take them by surprise, and if he, and then eventually murder them and forcibly rape them. But if you did a frame-by-frame analysis, you would see that there's a certain point where he has started to use force. I'm imagining knocking someone to the ground. And the force has not yet risen to the level of deadly physical force, but what we know about the dynamics of certain crimes like forcible rape or kidnapping or robbery is that in a nanosecond, the perpetrator of the crime can begin to use deadly physical force. And what the legislature has said in this category is that you don't have to wait until that point has arrived before deadly physical force is justified. If we get to the next category, burglary of a dwelling or occupied building, I've talked about that, I believe, now in the first screenshot video. So again, if it's a dwelling, that's where people live, or occupied building, that's a building in which people are located. If there's reason to believe that there's a burglary, and what is a burglary? Someone is making an unlawful entry with an intent to commit a crime. So if there's that reasonable perception, and if the use of deadly physical force is reasonably necessary to prevent the burglary, then it's justified. I'm going to just take a minute. I don't believe that I don't believe that deadly physical force would always reasonably be necessary. I'm thinking, for example, there was a time when there was the young man who lived next door to where I live was probably 10 or 11 or 12, and he was really taken by what did I have? I don't know, the iPad or something, and his parents wouldn't get him one. Now, this didn't happen, but just imagine that, and I was living by myself in those days. Let's imagine that I was away from home, and as I'm pulling into the driveway, I see his body half in and out of my dining room window. I don't believe under those circumstances, even though I've got reason to believe that there's a burglary of a dwelling, I don't think my use of deadly physical force would have been reasonably necessary to have prevented the burglary. Then the third category is arson, and I think that speaks for itself why we don't have to wait for the arson to use deadly physical force before we can use deadly physical force against the arson. This then leaves us with the category of physical force being used in defense of property. And I've listed three categories of crimes against property. And that is, we have burglary, but not of a dwelling or occupied building, and even if it is of a dwelling or occupied building, the circumstances for deadly physical force don't exist. In those instances, then just physical force can be used. Criminal mischief is essentially the intentional damage to property, and I think I mentioned earlier somebody keying the vehicle of your dreams you just purchased. That's criminal mischief. Sorry, you can't kill them. It's only a crime against property. And then larceny, again, if it's only larceny as opposed to larceny as part of a burglary, if it's just larceny, deadly physical force cannot be used. So that really is going to conclude this presentation. And what I'm scrolling just to point out that I have offered explanations in the posting itself that I have elaborated on or paraphrased in this video. So we have our 3 videos, 2 long, 1 short, that takes into account the defense of justification.